Very much. Good morning. Yes, my name is Stuart. I'm the Chief Executive of Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. I'm just reflecting on Jerry's presentation there, feeling I've probably just been through a learning experience rather than a winning experience as a director of the WISE Group and probably the granddaddy of all procurement processes under the work programme. And so I feel some scars on the back through the procurement exercises that you have just outlined in some detail there, and I do hope that everyone else in the room doesn't go through the same kind of experience that we've just been through this last couple of weeks. Anyway, I'm not here to talk as the WISE Group, I'm here to talk as Chamber of Commerce, and I've been asked this morning to give a kind of short, sharp view on the Scottish business and economic landscape. And when I said yes, I'll happily do that, I had fully intended to come along and be upbeat, positive, bursting with confidence. Chief Executive of Chamber of Commerce, especially one in Glasgow, that's what you do. You beam with optimism, you search for all the good news, you accentuate the positive. A bit like a pig searching out truffles, that kind of position. And on a daily basis, I do see an awful lot of excellent news. You see investments announced in renewables, you see reports of strong hotel occupancy, whisky exports performing well, steady increases in employment in, of all places, financial services, and a strongish recovery in the stock market up until yesterday, of course, when the rating agencies made their comments on US debt. But within that, some excellent performances from those FTSE 100 companies that we do have in Scotland, like Greco's or Weir's. Then I thought perhaps it'd be wise to get the facts, and so I asked my team to compile an outline from a collection of the most recent assessments of where we stand today. And needless to say, when you're burdened with the facts, the picture becomes a little bit less clear-cut. So for every piece of good news, there's another that reminds us that we've just been through the Great Recession. Can I just check, do we have a presentation here for me that can be called up? It was sent through to you. It's going to be slightly tricky if I...
Yeah, if you press the right key, Stuart.
Is it there?
Should be there.
The right key,
right.
Right. That's fine, good, thank you very much. That's helpful because there's charts coming. But this isn't a chart, this is slightly wordy I'm afraid, but this is a summary assessment from Slim's Consulting and what we've just all been through, which I'm sure we all know and understand. The longest and deepest recession since 1945, a 6.3% contraction in Scottish economy in 15 months, with 2009 seeing one of the steepest declines in world trade in 1 year on record at some 12%. Officially, we came out of recession 5 quarters past, but for some sectors and businesses it doesn't really feel like that. It doesn't feel as if it's near over yet. For Scotland, the recession nearly doubled the number of job seeker allowance claimants, significantly loosened the labour market and absolutely hammered the housing market. How the recession was caused is more or less controversial depending on your attitude to markets, but there are some now well established storylines around the collapse of confidence in the world financial system, which initially and severely blocked the supply of capital to business. And still does in the property and construction sectors. New builds in the private housing sector, very limited. Developers looking for finance to develop offices outside London still finding it exceptionally tough, as I'm sure those here today from the construction industry would confirm. Manufacturing took a pretty heavy knock initially with the 2009 collapse in global trade, but much of the early increase in unemployment came from manufacturing, not initially as we thought from professional services. It was actually manufacturing that took the blow. But it's now the impact on consumer confidence that's really being tested just now. We've got this uncomfortable combination of rising prices, mainly through oil and commodities, alongside a sort of vigorous shakeout, as we've heard, in employment in the public sector, pay freezes, and some real fundamental continuing doubts about future wealth, either held in housing or in pensions. All of these are combining to keep consumer confidence under heavy pressure. So how then is Scotland's economy currently faring? This is one of the regular surveys of economic activity. This comes from the Bank of Scotland Purchasing Managers Index, which is compiled with Market. We're one of the surveyed organisations, so we get all the details of how this survey looks. Here's the picture over the past 22 months for economic output. If the graph goes above the red x-axis, we're seeing rising output, and if it falls below, then we're seeing obviously falling output. Overall, you can see that over that period, the growth is marginally positive. We're seeing some growth in output, but it is tentative. And of course, we've been hit with the occasional shock that pushes performance down a bit, to a very slight extent by the Icelandic ash clouds this time last year. It was really a whole year ago, amazing. And much more severely with the crushing winter weather in December. But you can see how much output bounced back in the following quarter, for the first quarter of 2011. However, if we compare Scotland with other parts of the UK, which you can't see on this slide, we were slower into recession, and we appear to be a bit slower coming out, although things have picked up a little bit in the last quarter. The most recent PMI survey just out last week had some very positive messages showing that the service sector, which is after all the dominant sector in Scotland, that for the first time in over a year, that was growing faster than manufacturing, with some new business levels up faster than in any month since August 2007. So that's a little encouraging sign from the service sector, which has been pretty weak all the way since recession. Also, we're seeing that Scottish firms are adding to their payrolls. They added during March at the fastest pace since February 2008. And that was a message that was only just confirmed yesterday by the Bank of Scotland's specific labour market survey. So the highest quarterly reading improvement in that survey since the first quarter of 2008. But within that, there's some nuances. It was the business services and financial services that were doing better. Tourism, travel, leisure, much less positive. And we saw some confirmation of that from the pretty negative British Retail Consortium figures for March. It's manufacturing that was recruiting staff faster than services, and that's perhaps reflecting perhaps a longer term record of monthly output growth in manufacturing, and it's especially in exports. And that squares with my own personal experience in and around the Glasgow region. The engineering companies, the energy companies, the whisky companies, they've all been doing really pretty well in export markets. And we see that firsthand through the trade certification work that we do, and through the development of the Scottish Chamber's international body, which is our mechanism for helping companies grow into overseas markets. But it's construction companies, retailers, hospitality businesses, and those businesses with a heavy dependence on public sector work, as we're discussing this morning, which are indeed finding it a lot tougher. But some very highly unpredictable patterns of business. So if you're strong in export prospect, if you're in export prospects probably still look fairly bright. If you're strong in domestic consumers or in the public sectors, some companies are doing really well, some are really suffering.